What's up, Junkie Nation? Guess who's back? Eric Nicksick, the general manager at Xtreme Couture, also one of the top MMA coaches in the world, and he's dabbled in MMA, boxing, other combat sports. Eric, how you doing, my man? Good to see you back in LV. You were in China about 48 hours ago.
Yeah, man, good to be stateside, grabbing my In-N-Out burger first thing right when I got home. So, yeah, it's good to be home, brother.
How's Chinese food out there?
I didn't even know half the stuff I was eating, to be honest with you. Like, I went to a Korean barbecue spot at one point, and I was like, I don't even know what this says. I don't even know what it is. I'm just going to cook it thoroughly and enjoy it. So it was all really good food.
Okay. So it was good though.
Whatever yeah, it was good. Yeah. I didn't want to know what it was, but it was good.
You actually went out early for that fight because we had been talking on the side. What is now that the sport's 32 years old, in November it'll be 33. What is the appropriate time to get out to an event early? Is it by the time difference, 1 hour per day or something like that? I think I used to hear in the past.
That's a good question. I think too for us, George, it's like I think the 10-day mark is kind of the sweet spot if you're trying to get out there early and get acclimated, for the fighter especially. So Johnny got out there a week ahead of me, and then because I had Roman, and then Johnny had left that Saturday, so he was out there almost like 2.5 weeks, where I was only out there for 10 days.
Okay. Aaron, I was telling Goes, Aaron Pico had noted that Lerone Murphy came over from the UK on Tuesday travel day. And he thought, I wonder if that might come back to bite him. Of course, it didn't. Lerone looked great. But because the game evolves so much, like, remember when you guys opened the gym, people were flipping tires and the axe out in the woods and Shark Tank, like, obviously there's just so many different ways to approach the sport. And that's kind of what I was asking. Another question. What have you noticed? Zhang Mingyang was the party pooper at Anthony Smith's retirement party, but his party just got he wasn't going to retire, but it was probably like a, coming out of his shell, becoming a title contender party, and Johnny Walker spoiled that. What have you noticed in your personal experiences? Is it better to be the party pooper or the host of the party?
I like to ruin the party, to be honest with you. I like that standpoint, because you really have nothing to lose. You know what time it is when you sign up to fight a guy in his home country, the up and coming prospect with first round finishes, and has been putting guys away. So we knew the side, the A side or the B side that we were on. So I think you show up with a lot less pressure, to be honest with you.
I realize the UFC butters a lot of toast and corn and whatever. A lot of us make our living off of what they've created, but at the same time, I like to be honest. To me, it just seemed like this was a setup for Zhang Mingyang, against the guy who's got a name but has struggled at times and also been fabulous at times. Was that like a motivator? Did you guys read into that as well?
I didn't play too much into it personally as the coach, or make it like bulletin board material. I think a lot of things can go unsaid. Knowing the situation, we wouldn't have to really express it. We kind of knew what it was. We had an opponent and a date in June to fight on the New Jersey card. And when Zhang beat Anthony Smith, Mick called right away and wanted to take us off this fight and give us the main event. So with that being said, I think we kind of knew the situation at hand going into it, and we didn't really have to speak much about it. So we knew our back was against the wall, and it was more of a kind of a setup, if you will. But I think it also to defend Mick and those guys, it was an appropriate challenge for Zhang to see where he was at in his career too.
Right. Yeah. And he looked good. He looked good for a bit too. I mean, it's not like he stunk the whole place up.
Right.
But okay, now here's another question. I want to tie it into two different events I saw. Johnny Walker on Saturday and Anthony Hernandez a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, and RDR, to be fair, RDR is going to face Anthony Hernandez. He's fought a lot, bro. Like, he fought 4 times in the UFC and once outside the UFC, all in 1 year. And he's already booked again. Fighters are emotional characters, beasts, whatever you want to call them. I don't want to sound like the UFC's predatory either, but the UFC needs bodies at times, and fighters rarely say no. So what's the role of the coach? if not the manager, to say tap the brakes. Sometimes the division can just breathe and you can move up based off others get losing or being sidelined. Same thing with Johnny Walker. That's a huge win. So do you let it breathe, or do you like it when fighters capitalize and jump into another camp after a week or two's rest?
I think it depends on the guy, and I think in the RDR situation, he's really building on the momentum. He's getting out of these fights not necessarily unscathed, but he's getting out of these fights without like huge injuries. And if you feel like you can keep that momentum rolling and you can get into the next camp healthy, then this game is, as you know, every weekend there's a new fight, there's a new card, and this allows him to remain relevant if he's fighting as consistently as he is, and he's going out and getting impressive wins. So I think he's doing the right thing.
Eric, a guy like Johnny Walker, who has so many intangibles in his favor, right? With the height, the reach, his speed, mixing that with power, that seems like there's so much potential for things that he can do. What's it like getting that mold of clay and kind of not maybe rebuilding it, but just adding some touches to it? What's it like coaching a guy that has that many crazy intangibles to his game?
Oh, it's been so much fun. It really has. I think the thing that you cannot coach is creativity. And I think allowing him to find openings to be creative in that process is where he shines his best. So that's been a lot of my work essentially is reminding him that there isn't like a specific technique. It's more about how do you create these openings to allow you to be explosive and fight within your mind's eye. Like he sees things that like reminds me of a lot like Uriah Hall, where Uriah was so creative in his striking, and but that was all off of feel and all off of what he can see in the moment. And it was interesting as a young coach when I was coaching Uriah was, you would give him base combinations, and then in that combination you'd slide a certain direction or do a certain thing, and he would capitalize off of your movement. And Johnny's very similar to that regard. It's not really a coachable attribute that he has. It's more about just like what he can create in that moment and allowing him to do that. So that's been the exciting thing for me. It's been a lot of fun just being in the the pad sessions or the sparring sessions and watching him work and being able to be creative, and then also giving him some tools to kind of add on to his already impressive skill set.
I am not jealous of what you have to go through physically and mentally from week to week. And I remember at the end of Khamzat's win, when he won the belt, thinking, this is probably something that every coach that has fighters in this division, they were all sent a message, and they probably have to react in some way, right, with their fighters. What was that like for you to see a guy be so dominant against a guy who's pretty good himself in DDP? He had his number that night. What do you, having high-level middleweights, have to come back on Monday and practice, and how do you guys absorb all that?
Well, I think it's a number of things. I think if you can also learn from what Khamzat does really well in tying his level changes into his striking, into his fit-ins offensively, and be able to take some of that and apply it to some of your fighters that fit. And then also, what do you do if you fight a guy like that? Like, there was a moment there when I was watching the fight and I was trying to put myself in DDP's coach's shoes. Like, what adjustments are you going to make in these positions? And it's certainly a position you don't want to be in. You're like, fuck, this is one-way traffic. And how can you create some opportunities for your fighter? It was very similar in the way I felt with Roman and Fluffy. It was like, man, we have to try to create something to get the band playing, get some offense on our side. And that's the tough part when you have a guy like Khamzat, where he can dictate where the fight goes and where the fight takes place. It's coming. It's like Mariano Rivera. It's a cutter. It's a four-seamer. You just got to try to hit it. So I think when you go back to the drawing board, if you're Dricus in their camp, maybe just more situational sparring, put them in these bad positions, shark tanks, working your get-ups and things like that. But good luck, man. Good luck. I think that's going to be the task that a lot of us at 185 are going to have to deal with if you get to that point where you're fighting Khamzat.
I want to piggyback a little bit off of something that George said. Like, is it not maybe, sometimes you don't always have to just be that guy that gets in there next. It's kind of fun to see other guys get in there and prove more about a certain guy. there's not so much of a rush sometimes with certain fighters. Do you think that can benefit a lot? Is that ever a card that you like to play, where especially like a guy like Khamzat, where as great as he is, you still feel like there are a couple question marks here and there, but we haven't really had the opportunity to see any of those play out. Like, would you rather be on that side of maybe taking your time and seeing other fighters and different looks before you rush your guys into it?
You mean as far as like matching up against Khamzat?
Yeah, like we'll take like a guy like Sean Strickland, right? Like for instance, would it be a one where you'd say, "Hey, Sean, obviously I know you're going through what you're going through right now. We got to get past that, but let's just take our time and really build ourselves towards this guy"?
Yeah, I think when you have a clear target. So, for example, like when when Stipe was the champion, you're in camps for Jairzinho or Junior Dos Santos, but your target is always looking a little bit ahead, knowing who the champion is and trying to build a skill set throughout those camps when you do eventually get the shot at the title. So under your situation or under your scenario, it's like if it's Sean, let's say Sean has a fight or two before we get another crack or a crack at Khamzat. During that timeline, you definitely want to start implementing some things that are either going to negate some of that wrestling or build onto if eventually you do fight Fluffy Hernandez or Khamzat or RDR. I think a lot of those guys have that same sort of pedigree, if you will, with Khamzat being at the top of that pedigree or the top of that skill set. You want to try to start adding those attributes in your camp now, whether you're fighting him or not.
Eric, you brought up Francis. He's right behind you there in that photo. It's a pretty cool photo, by the way. The more and more we hear about him, the less and less we hear about the MMA side and hear a little bit more about the boxing side. Do you have an update on the last time maybe you spoke with him and what plans could possibly be?
We talk regularly, but we just talk as buddies. I know the Wilder rumor has been kicking around. I talked to him a couple days ago. It was just more about just life and family. And I'll see him next week. He's in Paris, so I head out to Paris for Brad Tavares next week, and then I'll be able to spend a couple days with Francis out there and get caught up on a lot of this stuff and kind of see where he's at training wise and what his next plan is. But it sounds like to me what he wants is that Wilder fight, and haven't heard much more about the MMA side of thing at all, to be honest with you.
Would you like him to return to MMA?
Oh, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, that's that's my specialty on the side of things. I still feel like we have a lot more we can do in the MMA side. Unfortunately, it's tough because when I look at our relationship as a whole, when he lived in Vegas during the COVID era and we were fighting for the UFC, we spent so much time together and training and building that MMA skill set that we see him have. It sucks because I just feel like we were growing so much and doing so many great things, and then all of a sudden you kind of get the rug pulled out from underneath you. I don't know if that's the right term to use, but because he shifted over his focus more over to boxing. And for me as the MMA side of things, I definitely miss like that growth and that maturation that we've had, and being able to show new wrinkles in his game. The wrestling side of things and building off of those attributes that I think we've been working so hard to gain in the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, the reason I ask, because it is kind of a Captain Obvious question. I like watching him compete in MMA. He's ferocious either way, whether it's in the sweet science, the ring, or the 4-ounce gloves, right? But I do remember you telling us publicly, life-changing money came with boxing, and
sure.
He bonused out his coaches. So at the same time, he did reach a pinnacle in MMA, and that's why I was wondering, because it's such a hard sport on it takes its toll on the body too.
Yeah, I just think talent-wise, man, like it's so much fun watching him really take on all the elements of MMA, coming from a guy that was notorious for just knocking people out. Now I think he's a dual threat. He's finishing guys on the ground. He has a great wrestling ability now that I think only adds to what he does in the striking game. You have to worry about both, but then like when I watched him grow from the Tyson Fury fight and the Anthony Joshua fight, obviously the Joshua outcome was far from what we desired. But with that being said, he had a whole 6, 7, 8 months of straight boxing in between that time, and he improved leaps and bounds in his boxing. We just weren't really able to show it in the Joshua fight. But that stuff also does trickle over to the MMA side of things and what we're able to do offensively as well.
Tell me if I'm crazy or not. I was on another show, and I said that had Francis stuck around and fought Jones and Aspinall and continued to grow to like a 4th, 5th title defense, he may have, only because of the money we've heard that was attached to John Jones, may have either eclipsed or at least made what he made in boxing. Am I high on crack, or am I in a neighborhood that's, where that's a legit argument?
I don't know. I'm not too sure. I mean, I do know what was offered for the John Jones fight. And he made a lot more in comparison in the Tyson Fury fight versus what we were offered for the John Jones fight. But I'm not privy to a lot of that negotiation information that he had with PFL or the Anthony Joshua fight. I don't know. I mean, he took great care of us. But Francis has been kind of managing himself and doing his own thing. So when it comes to the numbers, I'm not 100% sure, but you're definitely spot on when it comes to the level of competition. I think when you're looking at a guy like John and Tom Aspinall, those are 1A and 1B when you're referring to two of the best heavyweights in the world. So that to me is the importance. It's not necessarily the money. It's about the level of competition that we get to go out and showcase against.
Man, I want to see those two guys in a stadium. I don't know. I think he's got one fight left with the PFL. They really haven't used him much.
Yeah.
And the UFC's heavyweight division has become shallow in a sense, I'd love to see those two guys in a stadium throw hands.
Yeah, even in talking with Francis, it's just like he would really love the ability to be able to compete against John. That's really the fight that makes sense. And although the title means a lot to us, it also means a lot more, I think, when you're talking about a legacy fight versus a guy of the stature of John Jones and what he's done with his career, that you could even make that just a super fight, have Aspinall and Gane fight for the title, and we'll fight John just for the legacy side of things.
At the White House?
Wherever, don't matter to me.
Hey, when was your first official head coaching gig? When you were actually the head coach of a fighter? Do you remember the year?
Oh God, good question. Probably Ray Cepho. When Ray fought World Series. Yeah, Ontario.
Holy shit. Okay.
So that was like the first time Ray's like, I want you to be my head coach. So it might have been then. Dennis Davis, obviously, and then myself and Brad with Ray. So the three of us together for a long time, and then like Dan Ige, been with Dan for 26 fights, I think now.
So that was about what, 10, 12 years ago?
Yeah, it's been a long time. The first UFC fight I've ever cornered was Campman Condit in Indianapolis.
How much better are you now? Are you better as a coach now than you were then? Like, how much have you learned? And
oh man, tons. It's kind of funny trying to think back to that point. And it's just all about reps. I think just having the opportunity to go and do it over and over and over again and learn from your mistakes. And I think that's the thing for me is like, you're never really going to find perfection in this sport. It's evolving, it's changing. You're going to mess up. But the key benefactor is that you're willing to go back and go back to the drawing board and do it all over again, win, lose, or draw. Like, I think every week is a reset. So that is the toughest part about this sport, is that there is no off season, but it's also a blessing in disguise when you're busy, because you got to refocus and gear back up for the next man up. So you do get a lot of reps in this sport as well.
Has coaches' pay improved a little, a lot, or a ton since you started?
Coaches' pay, I think for me it's gone up because of, the name recognition and the value of guys that I've grown with over the years. So yeah, I think it's definitely gone up, but I think there's been a trickle down effect because of, the fighter pay is improving and, being around more and more guys for a longer amount of time. Like, we're on our 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th contract with the UFC. So inherently those pay bumps are going to be part of it. So yeah, I definitely a lot more comfortable financially, which allows us to do a lot more things. And And on the flip side of that, it's been nice as well to be able to not have to take pay from some of the younger guys that maybe have lost or not have the money to afford. Like, for example, like this past week, I was helping out Kiefer Crosby. He wasn't able to get the victory. And like he's, I don't want to put his business out there, but they're not making a lot of money, man. They're just really not. So I think being able to be taken care of by the top upper echelon fighters allows us as coaches to have a little bit more wiggle room to help out the guys that might not be getting paid as much.
Every time the sport takes a bump, like with the UFC now going to Paramount and CBS, I want all the people that deserve it to get a bump as well. There's a lot of NFL coaches. I always use those comparisons to the big sports because the UFC's wanted to compare themselves to the big sports. There's a lot of NFL coaches that make more than some of the players that play for them. Not the quarterbacks, obviously, not the superstars. I get it. But there's a value to what you guys do.
Sure.
And same thing with the judges and refs. I want them to make more money. I know we criticize them, but trust me, there's not better people on earth or more qualified to make those split-second decisions in this high-speed human chess game that we have.
Sure.
Which leads me to one of my last questions. If you had the choice, would you rather be a judge or a ref if you had to do one or the other and no longer coach?
Man, that's a good question. Shit. Oh, I don't know. I mean, God bless them because they have such a tough job. I had a good conversation with Mark Goddard after the Kiefer Crosby fight, and I just felt bad for him because he's like, you get spotlighted so much in the situations that you're in, and we're talking about really, really good referees, and they have to make these split second decisions and make a call on something that they might be wrong or they might have got it wrong, but they're doing it so often at a high level. And they're humans, there's going to be mistakes. I think that their job to me is probably tougher in a lot of ways. So I think maybe for me, being a ref would be a lot more fun because you're hands-on action and so I appreciate those guys a lot more because I think the spotlight's on them a lot more. So I think probably being a ref would be the harder thing to do, and I'd venture to try to do something a little bit harder.
Would you let guys fight on the ground or stand them up after a while if it's just a stall and the fans are booing? What would be your style?
I don't know. I think under the circumstances, everything's going to be different under, hey, maybe I warned this guy enough times or there's not enough action. So each circumstance is different. I think if you're referring to like the Khamzat DDP thing, I don't think I stand him up in some of those positions only because, DDP has shown that he can't get up. He couldn't get up. So why reward him for a stand up in a position that he's shown over and over that he can't get up? But now if you're just stalling the fight and laying there and there's no ground and pound, no advancements, or you're not looking to finish if you're on top. So a lot of people don't understand that before the fight, these referees are coming in the back and they're explaining to you what they're looking for. So you're not walking into the fight going like, oh, you didn't tell me you were going to do this. I guarantee you Goddard or one of these guys said, look, I'll give you as much leeway as I can, but under these circumstances, I'm going to give you these verbal warnings. And if you're not advancing or not doing these things, then you're going to force my hand. So in Goddard's defense, I'm sure he already went over some of those things with Khamzat. And DDP might have been thinking to himself, hey, if I can stall these positions out, I'm going to get a stand up. So I venture to guess that was the case in the Khamzat situation.
4 quick rapid fires. What's the most goosebumps you've ever had in a fight, going into a fight, whether it's the actual in-walk arena or in the back? Do you remember a time, maybe it was even your first fight, where you're just like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm excited, but I'm nervous. I'm scared. When did you have your best freak out?
Oh man, that's a good one. And like, I think all of them are special in a certain way, but the one that always really jumped out to me was Chris Curtis's short notice fight versus Jack Hermanson in the O2 Arena. I think just because like Chris was walking out to Darren Till's song and like paying homage to Darren Till, and we came out to Sweet Caroline, and the whole O2 Arena just erupts and is like singing along and like cheering Chris on. That part was really cool. I really enjoyed that. Although we didn't get the win, that moment was pretty sweet. Tyson Fury and Francis was pretty freaking cool. I think because it came full circle.
Yeah.
There was a moment where I remember like when Francis is at the house, this is during COVID, we're having dinner or something. We're just sitting out back. And we had this conversation. I remember like just talking about like our hopes and dreams and something we want to accomplish. And I remember Francis like saying that to me, like, I really want to fight box Tyson Fury. And in my mind, it's like, what a great goal to have, but is that really achievable? And like kind of sitting in that moment, like thinking like you're almost like talking to your kid, like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. Like, all right, kid, good luck. Like maybe, yeah, one day. And then sure as shit, bro, we're sitting there and Francis is leaned up on the ropes and we're watching Tyson Fury make his walk. And he just kind of looks over at me with like this little shit-eating grin. He's like, hey, remember that time I said I was on the fight Tyson Fury? I was like, yeah, dude, he's right there. He's like, yeah, man, we did it. I was like, you did it, bro. This is crazy. So that was also a pretty cool moment.
Full circle moment. I love it. What's the closest you ever came to fighting, or have you just never been close? Like, did anyone ever approach you? Did a teammate ever nudge you and say, come on, get in the camp, do it?
Yeah, a bunch of times. When I was working with Dennis a lot, Dennis was fighting on a lot of those regional cards here in town, and there was a promoter that would come in and check in on Dennis. So I think like the two fights Dennis had there, both times he offered me fights on that card. The first time was against Ryan Bader. Bader was fighting, on the same card as Dennis, and I'd asked my wife. I said, "Hey, would you be cool if I took this fight?" It was like for like $2,000 flat or something like that. And she was pretty much like 8 or 9 months pregnant with McKenna. She's like, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" And I was like, "No, like it'd be cool, like training every day, doing this every day, just get a couple." This is before amateurs. This is before like Tough Enough and everything. So you didn't get like an amateur fight. You just basically turned pro. And thank God she talked me out of it. I would have fucking been in a wheelchair probably after
this Bader coming out of ASU, right?
Yeah, and this is I mean, I knew Bader from Vegas, from football. I was a year older than him. I played at Green Valley. He was at McQueen up in Reno. So they had a very good sports program up north. Mm-hmm. So I knew of him. I knew who he was, and I was like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. Like compete against a guy like Ryan Bader. And thank God my wife was smart enough to tell me it was a bad idea.
In 2026, will you coach more fights than you did in 2025 or less?
Oh, I don't know. Probably about the same. I would say I don't see myself taking any more time off or not coaching specific fighters. So I would venture to guess it's probably about the same. I usually average anywhere from 20 to 30 UFC fights a year. So I would say probably about the same.
All right. And the last one is, what's your timeline for quitting? Is it an age? Is it a number of fights? Is it accomplishments? Or will you just know? We see fighters who are up there in age, and sometimes when they lose, we're like, is he taking off the gloves? Is she taking off the gloves? Because sometimes they don't know. And then others are pre-planned it. But have you ever even given it any thought?
I think now I have a lot more just because of the cycle of guys that I've been around, being there for Gray and Campman and Jay Haran and Mike, that first like crop of guys that I was able to see at their primes and then have to make that decision to retire. So each and every one of them had different reasonings of retiring, and some of them weren't by choice. So that's one thing I've really taken away from the sport in helping out the younger guys, is explaining to them that the last you never know. It might not be for reasons that you understand or reasons that you are trying to retire or anything like that. Unfortunately, this is that type of sport where, your last fight could be the last time you're in the cage. So, and that happened with Martin. That happened with Campman. He wasn't planning on retiring after the Condit fight, but unfortunately he suffered enough concussions during that time that it forced him out of the sport. So it's a small reminder, man, that the fragility of life and the sport is finite. So enjoy every moment.
I know you won't be the first coach in the Hall of Fame. Respect to the other ones that came before you, but I know you will be in the Hall of Fame one day. You've had an incredible career.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for the interview here on MMA Junkie. Our audience loves you, goes, and I do as well. So thank you for the time. I know I usually say 15, and look at us. We're at 30. If I say 10, we go to 20. I just can't help it, though, just because you're a wealth of knowledge and so honest and a good person.
No, I miss you guys. It's always good to talk to you guys, and I feel like we haven't got to do this in a while, but always got to bring up just how long you guys been on this journey with me. So being able to share that time with you guys and the growth and everything we've spent together. I mean, shit, I think you and I are the three of us going on like 13, 14 years of doing this together. So, it's always great being able to sit down and talk with you guys and kind of rehash some of the times when we were grinding and coming up together, so.
For sure. Yeah. No, we appreciate the kind words. And again, thanks for the time today. And hopefully we'll see you in the gym soon.
Yeah. Love you both, man. Thanks, guys.
All right.